mouth is a desert, running dry on the tip of my
Welcome, Maura
tongue.
Rodgers to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I can
I'm
taste
well. How
the
are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. Today, I have you on as a registered dietitian and integrative health coach. We're going to be talking about your work in just a moment. But before we do that, what got you into this field?
I have loved food forever. I mean, since I started eating, and food was such an important part of my upbringing. My parents would cook fresh, healthy food for us every single day, and I never realized how much of a gift that was until I got older and I realized that maybe wasn't the case for a lot of people, and food takes on a lot of different meanings and roles, and it's complicated, and I think it's contributed to individuals having a poor relationship with their eating, having health issues that they don't feel great with. I just want people to enjoy and celebrate food in the way that I love it, but do it with more intention so they know how it's affecting them and how they can use it to work for their goals and their future.
At what age should a person start to look at food for what it truly is rather than what they make it to be, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think as early as possible is better. I mean, I have a 2-year-old right now and an 8-month-old, and I'm already trying to start the conversation around the value of food and how beautiful the colors are and how all those different pigments represent different antioxidants and how they do different things to the body. And I don't know how much my 2-year-old totally understands, but I also encourage him to think about when he's hungry, how hungry is he, and what does his belly tell him? I think if parents can instill that and even teachers instill that as early as possible, it just I really think helps kids grow into adults having this level of appreciation and understanding that food can definitely taste good, and I think it should taste good fundamentally, but there's all this power behind food that can really transform your life. I think as early as possible is best.
And it is up to the parents essentially to really get their children on track to eat healthy foods. If you are someone who, goes to KFC, you get a bucket of fried chicken, you get some coleslaw, some mashed potatoes, and then your kids are going to develop that habit too. And maybe you're missing some of the essential things, the vegetables, the fruits. And until maybe they get older in life, they don't necessarily have much say in that. So it is essential that parents or that adults they learn about food, eating healthier today. So if they do have children, they can start to implement that when they're young, and then it becomes basically a habit or a lifestyle. But today, most adults are just not educated enough when it comes to what foods that they should be eating. Since we have that disparity from the education, I mean, we have our phones and it has all of these wonderful resources at our fingertips. There's not much, I guess you can say, education out there for adults to say, hey, your kids should be eating this or you should be eating this. Is more so just eat what you want. Oh, you gained a little bit too much weight, go on this fad diet. There's a mix and mash of information that are being thrown at people right now. How can someone start to focus on what they need to do?
That's a great question, and it's a very complicated one. I think it's very easy to look at somebody who might be making those food choices and make some assumptions, but there's so many variables that influence what we eat and why we eat. And you mentioned basically that nutrition fundamental knowledge. There isn't a point in time where adults or kids really learn the basics, and I think that's somebody's right. I mean, we eat every day for the rest of our life, and most of us don't really know how it's impacting us and the role that it's playing, and that knowledge is powerful. And it's not to say that we shouldn't enjoy fried chicken and coleslaw. I mean, I love all the things that everybody else does, and I think there's a time and a place for that. But not only do we not have a good base understanding or knowledge, but I also think that there's an accessibility problem where if you have 10 fast food chains in your neighborhood for every one grocery store, then you're kind of outnumbered and you can get a lot more bang for your buck when you get a bucket of fried chicken. I think there's an element of accessibility, I think affordability. I also think that food takes on other meanings, as I mentioned earlier, as far as comfort and managing stress and feeling connected to home. Food isn't just about nourishment. It brings us joy and it's pleasurable and it triggers this dopamine cycle as soon as we consume these certain foods, and it drives us to want more and more. So it's not only just, I think willpower and self-control is like a very small part of it. I think it's also your biology that can be working against you the more you're leaning into those kinds of foods. You just crave them and want them more. I think a very simple place to start would be taking advantage of, like you said, any free resources you can get your hands on. YouTube videos on what to eat and why, and just the basics of macronutrients, the basics of micronutrients, and how to do a little bit of preparation as far as cooking a little bit more. I know cooking can be overwhelming and not everybody's favorite thing, but there's thousands of 15-minute recipes that are so delicious, that are so easy, like a stir fry where you can get, an amazing sauce, some great protein, tofu, chicken, beef, and wonderfully delicious vegetables and throw that together in 10 minutes. I think it's simplifying it, getting some of that nutrition knowledge under your belt. Next step, moving on to a couple quick, simple recipes that you can master. Don't overwhelm yourself with making a new meal every single day, just getting a couple that you feel comfortable with and building on that. And then also figuring out if eating food for non-nourishment reasons, if you do feel stressed, if you do feel overwhelmed, if you are leaning into comfort foods at night, if you're binging, overeating, mindless eating, emotional eating, being able to separate that and find more effective ways of managing those things, I think is also a really powerful place to start.
And that is a good place to start. But the issue is the obstacle, right? The obstacle to watch the video, the obstacle to get the groceries, the obstacle to cook, to get in the kitchen, to start the habit. And it is maybe the best thing they can do for themselves. I'm a huge advocate of meal prepping, of cooking at home. Fast food, in my opinion, it just slows you down, right? It just slows you down. It makes you sluggish. It makes you lethargic. And this is where we are. We have low energy, we have low drive, and it's because of the foods we eat is one problem. But that doesn't have to be a big issue. We can start to implement better routines, better systems, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. If I was someone who was interested in getting my diet back, getting my mind focused on nutrition, and I'm coming in to speak with you on a 20-minute call or something, what's some of the first things that we're going to be talking about so the audience can maybe get an understanding of, okay, now I know what I'm going to expect when I call?
Great question. I just want to first share that diets are wildly popular. It's a billion-plus-dollar industry. It's constantly vying for people's attention and resources and money and time, but they're so unsuccessful. And it's not because people fail at them, it's because diets are designed to fail. They're not meant to be sustainable. Regardless of what fad diet people start, by 12 months, most people regain that weight and some, and they're more compromised from a metabolism perspective. And they feel discouraged, they feel defeated, they feel like they failed, and then they feel like they have to start something else that's extreme. I work with people who are trying to get out of that cycle of that restricting, overeating, cutting calories, gaining weight, losing weight, and getting into a rhythm that works for them, that's personalized to them, where things start to click and it doesn't feel as hard. Something that I really focus on, which I think most diets and most other nutrition programs don't, is your mindset, your belief system, your knowledge, like we talked about, how you approach food, how you take care of yourself. So getting your mind in the right place is number one. If we think about what are behaviors and habits, well, they really start with the thoughts you have and the belief systems, and then those become your actions, and your actions become your behaviors, and your behaviors become your reality. We can't focus on changing our eating without first changing our mind. In that 20-minute call that I offer complimentary, I really help people figure out why do they want to make these changes and what's getting in the way. To your question, one of the things that comes to my mind is changing habits is hard. Maybe eating less fried chicken is also hard, but there's something difficult you have to face, whether you make that choice or something else. When you eat those foods, you have to deal with, like you said, the lethargic feeling, not performing well at work, not feeling your best, feeling sluggish, feeling bogged down, feeling tired. There's a cost to that. It's really a matter of what is the cost of not changing these behaviors, and can you live with that? And it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. I don't want people to overhaul their diet and overhaul their lifestyle, but celebrating the small steps and doing those well, and then building on that momentum as time goes on, I have found to be the most successful recipe. And a lot of my clients will say, it's been 3 months. I feel the best I've ever felt, and none of this has felt like work. And so I don't want people to have to struggle with their eating and their relationship with food and their eating habits, it can just be much easier than I think it currently is.
And I love starting with mindset because if you know anything about me, the show, everyone knows I love mindset. It's where we begin most of the time. And if you are having a wrong system, a wrong relationship, especially with food, is what we're talking about today. Why? Just like ask yourself why. Like, why do you want to eat better? Why do you want to do this? And if you can give yourself a purpose, most of the time, like if you're a parent, mostly you want to be the best shape you can be for as long as you can be for your kids. Because when they're little, like you have a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old, they're running around and you have to be able to keep up, right? Because you have to keep them safe. And I have a 1-year-old, he's almost 2.
Congrats.
Yes, thank you so much. He is fast, but I have to be faster. And even when he's 7, 13 years old, I'm going to be up in there. I'll be 40, 50, whatever I'll be. I have to be able to catch up to him, keep up with him. This is a goal of mine. So what do I have to do? I have to eat healthy. I have to maintain fit, like a proper physical fitness. But if I'm just going out doing the easy things, getting a burger after work or something, one day is going to hurt me. It's the habit. Now I make sure I'm giving myself the best foundation to reach my goal, which is to stay in the best physical shape I can be so I can keep up with my kid or children later on. This is something that many parents take for granted because when they finally do have to do something, it's just like, oh, wow, my back, my knees, or something. And then it's like a wake up call. When we have an option today to say, you know what, I'm going to make that shift, I'm going to make that jump. However, most people, they wait. They say, you know what, the gap between what I want and where I am, is daunting. I have to lose this much weight. It's daunting. I'm afraid to cook. I'm afraid to diet. It's daunting. And we understand that. And this is why I love the aspect of coaching or speaking with a nutritionist or someone who is adept in the skills that they're trying to instill within you, because you can go on a journey by yourself. But if you go with a guide, if you go with a mentor, if you go with a coach, you are going to be equipped to handle anything that comes your way, because something's going to come up, and it does. You're going to say, whoa, I have an answer already, versus, okay, I'll do it later. A lot of people put things on their to-do list. I'll do it later. And before you know it, you fall back. And that's similar to what happens with those diets, like they call it like yo-yo dieting. It's like you start, you stop, you start, you stop. But we do have to give ourselves the purpose for what we do. And once you have that purpose, the mindset, then we can start to implement the process. Now that we're starting to implement the process, should people start to look at food categories, food allergies, and figure out what they need? I know we could talk about macros and certain type of nutrients and vitamins. What is your steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to reinforce what you just said, I think if we can focus on nourishment over punishment and taking care of our body and celebrating it and putting the highest quality fuel you can get your hands on because you deserve nothing less, if that can be your mindset going into each day, then it's amazing what can come in literally 24 hours, 48 hours. Like, I'm not talking you have to wait 6 months to see benefits. Your entire physiology and biology changes every time you eat something. So your cells are responding and your cells become your systems, and all your systems talk to each other. You might find your digestion and your skin and your cognition and your cholesterol and your heart health and your metabolism, everything is just firing on all cylinders when it has the fuel that it's designed to use. Just think about viewing nutrition in a different way. It's not something that you should use to restrict or cut calories or punish yourself if you think just eating broccoli and chicken is what you should do for the rest of your life. Like, no, I love food and I think food should taste good. I think it should be so delicious. But when you have an intention behind the nutritional value, you just get the best of both worlds. You enjoy what you're eating and your body's like, wow, thank you. This is amazing. I can now do what I'm designed to do. Just keeping that in mind, and also what you said earlier about the longevity of life and how we want to, I mean, I do, and I think you do too. You want to maximize every day that you have on this amazing planet. And I see this all the time in my practice. People get biologically healthier as they get, chronologically older. There are people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are feeling the best they've ever felt without dieting. And I know that sounds so gimmicky and cliched, but it's just what happens when you start to eat and live in alignment with what the goals that you have for yourself, like when all those things really feel on track. To your question of where do we begin and what does that look like? Well, when we think about nutrition, it's highly personalized to each person, but there are some core fundamentals. When we think about our macronutrients, those are macro is basically what we need in larger amounts. So those are the three categories that we need to consume on a regular basis, each meal ideally, where we're getting the most energy. And those things include your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats. That trifecta, consuming those things, specifically fiber, which is a type of carbohydrate, and protein and fats at the same time, that is the best way to keep your energy stable, keep your mood stable, prevent those blood sugar spikes, which a lot of the time contributes to a lot of issues down the road. When we eat those core things, it really makes your life so much easier and becomes so much easier to listen to your hunger cues, recognize when you're full in a comfortable way. Looks like a lot of things. And there's so many ways that you can plug in those three macronutrients into different meals. And so, again, it doesn't have to be complicated. I don't want people to be so bogged down about hitting certain grams of proteins right away or focusing on a specific calorie count. I think focusing on getting some of the basics and listening to your hunger and fullness cues is such an easy place to begin.
Would you say, or maybe you can help people with this because I know this is going to be something that people are thinking about cravings versus hunger. What is the difference?
Great question. When we have physical hunger, that usually comes on gradually. It's something that we can physically feel in our belly in a very specific place. And it's something that is typically satisfied once we start eating. Cravings, on the other hand, are very different. Those typically come on super quickly, very strong. You typically crave one specific thing, whereas when you're physically hungry, you might be interested in a variety of things, whereas cravings are typically very narrow minded. And oftentimes, when we start to eat that, we're not satisfied after we begin to eat it. We sometimes want more and more. So there's a clear separation between that physical hunger sensation versus that craving, which may be also driven by our biology and our chemistry, but is usually something that we're trying to satisfy with food for non-nourishment reasons. For example, if you had a super stressful day at work and you have zero bandwidth to deal with anything else, and you're starving because maybe you skipped your lunch, not only are you in a place where your body's vulnerable from a hunger perspective, right? You're starving, you could eat anything. And that's where it's very hard to be mindful about what you're eating when you're on that 10 out of 10 on a hunger scale. So that's slightly working against you. And then on top of that, our body feels unsatisfied or a little uncomfortable when we feel those emotions that don't sit well. So when we're stressed or overwhelmed or alone or sad. And so our brain thinks that food is a very accessible, very quick option that's going to quickly resolve things. We might find we crave pizza because we're starving. We want like a high impact food. And when we start eating that, it triggers that dopamine cycle. And our brain says, wow, this is amazing. It's like fireworks go off in your brain. And then you find that one slice isn't enough and you need more of that as a way to quell and quiet down the discomfort and the stress and the sadness that maybe you have in your body. That's a case where having one slice isn't going to satisfy us. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, this makes sense. Let's say I skip lunch and now it's dinner and I'm very, very hungry. And I say, you know what? I'm going to ignore all the 10 fast food places and I'm going to go to my one grocery store. Now I'm in the grocery store. Now we have a whole array of things I can get in trouble with cookies, cakes. I mean, you name it, it's in that grocery store. And so I say, you know what? I'm just gonna get a salad. I'm just gonna get a chicken salad, grilled chicken salad. It's already pre-made. I buy it, and now I take it home. I eat it, but I'm still not satiated. Now I feel a craving, even though I ate enough. Or how does a person get over that craving of even though you ate enough, but now it's just like you need something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. A practice that I try to help my clients get into is before they eat, figure out on a hunger scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry are they? They can mentally anticipate how much food is going to satisfy them when they walk away from that. So if you can get in your mind, what would be a sweet spot as far as hunger, not starving, but comfortably hungry? And then also imagine what would it feel like to walk away from this meal comfortably full? And then once you get into that rhythm of knowing what that looks like and feels like for you, it becomes a lot easier to gauge portions without being so obsessive about weighing things and counting calories. So I would say starting there, getting comfortable with how do I want to feel after this meal? What does that, 7 out of 10 on a fullness look like and feel like for me? Let's say you did have a meal where there was protein from that chicken, there was fiber from the leafy greens that you had in that salad. Maybe there were other veggies that were incorporated, but maybe there wasn't enough of a starch or maybe there wasn't enough of a fat. That could be a time for you to say, if I have this salad and I know I'm not as satisfied physically, like I'm still physically hungry, then maybe I can add a little avocado to this, or maybe, a piece of whole wheat toast with, olive oil on it or something, and use those as croutons. So, however you can flesh that meal out so it's a little bit more nutritionally balanced, is that if that's what you need at that particular time, awesome. But let's say you are full. Let's say like you're pretty content, but you still are looking for other things. That's a perfect time for you to ask yourself, what am I hoping to get out of food? I know it's not nutrition. I know it's something else. So if you can identify before you make that decision to eat something, what is that something else? What is the goal? What is the feeling that I want from this? And what am I trying to resolve? That is fantastic. Once you have that information, you can say, oh, I actually want to feel relaxed. Usually, I like to sit down on the couch and watch TV as I'm eating something. And that's just a ritual. And that represents feeling like I have time for myself, or it's a way for me to recharge. So maybe that food is more about a ritual than it is about nutrition. So if you can find a way of shaking up that ritual or the goal that you want or the feeling that you want and not use food as much to lean on, then you find something else to replace that feels just as good, maybe if not better. That I think is also a really helpful practice to get into.
I know overeating is a big issue when someone's super hungry. They will, skip a meal and then they're just so hungry, they'll get all this food and they consume it so quickly. And I think it takes like something like 15 minutes for your brain to say, "Hey, I'm full." So if you are eating very, very quickly, very fast, you're going to overeat. You're going to be over that 100%. And you're going to feel like, "Oh my God, like I shouldn't have ate that much." And then the guilt comes in, and then it's just like a whole issue or a slew of problems that now you're just like guilt, overeating. What's the point now? Well, the point is we learned that day, right? Okay, maybe I should eat a little bit slower. Maybe I should not go for that cake too and my salad because I know sometimes people do what I call yin and yang eating, the good and the bad. Well, I had a salad, so that means I can have ice cream. So they have the good and they say they can have the bad because it's balanced. But sometimes our body doesn't need that ice cream or that cake or those cookies because they don't really bring us much nutritional prosperity, is what I'm going to call it. Because if we just have those cookies, which we have the sugars and the carbs and the fats, maybe 1 gram of protein, not necessarily balanced. Maybe if you're like a runner or something, you might need that extra carbs and stuff like that so you can afford a cookie. But to be honest, I believe those runners are going to opt for a better carb. And it's just because they know what works for the body, and different foods work different for different bodies. What is your process to help people find the foods that work for them?
There's a lot of awareness and mindfulness that we really inject into each food decision. So I have people track not only how they're feeling and their hunger level, but how satisfied they were after a meal. And we track their energy and how well they're sleeping. And it becomes very easy to understand and parse through what's adding value and what's not adding value as much. One thing that I have actually found to be really successful is and this is part of the mindset work, is changing the language we use around food choices. Oftentimes, we know there's certain foods that are nutritionally valuable and nutritionally poor, right? Like the cookie, for example. But I do realize and recognize that the more we label those foods as good and bad, the more we stay stuck in that pattern of rewarding good eating with foods that are more pleasurable. And so I like to focus on how can we get as much nutritional value in your body as possible, majority of the time. Let your body do the work, let your body operate better, and then find ways of still enjoying the things that might not be nutritious, but doing it in a way where you're super intentional about it. You're not looking to have a emotional response from that food or expecting that food's going to solve some distress within you. If we know that we're eating food and eating that cookie because you are sitting down, you're enjoying it, you're really intentional about savoring every single bite, you're not rushing through it, there's no guilt or shame attached to it, it's just a cookie, then it helps you create a much healthier relationship with a lot of those foods in that particular category. So you become a lot savvier about saying, you know what? I know this food isn't off limits. I could have this tomorrow or the next day or the next day. I'm not putting a lot of these restrictive parameters around it. And when you give yourself permission to do that and really savor that food, no longer label that as bad, like 9 out of 10 times, I find my clients are able to be so much more particular about when they want it and why they want it. And they become the bosses of that food decision. They no longer feel like that food has a grip on them or the food is driving their decision making or they feel out of control around food. It's sort of a method of finding nutritious, yummy food that work for people, whether they like to cook or not, it doesn't really matter. Finding a rhythm that works for them where they're getting that precious food into their precious body majority of the time and then being really intentional about those other food choices that they enjoy, that they know aren't terribly nutritious, but they want to incorporate in some facet, but do it in a way where they just feel much better about eating that. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it makes sense. The thing I want to talk about now is if we start to look at the foods that are happy foods and foods that are sad foods, right? This is where I think people have the hardest or the most difficult time. Because if we think of anything in life, a to-do list, let's say you have to clean your house. I don't want to clean my house, right? So instead of cleaning your house, you go on your phone. Okay, that's one example. Let's say you're in the gym, right? I don't want to go on the treadmill. So you just lift some weights instead, right? There's things that people are naturally adverse to. Just like, I just don't like it. And maybe they don't like vegetables. Maybe they don't like eating fruits and stuff like that, but they love cheeseburgers. They love chili dogs and stuff like that. How can we start to implement things that people don't like that are better for them? Because again, doing all weights is okay in the gym, but doing some cardio is actually recommended too. The same thing with cleaning your house. Yes, being on your smartphone is fun, but you need to have a clean space to be in so your mind can be more focused. And the same thing is true with our diet. We can love our cakes and our sweets and stuff like that, but if you eat that all day long, you're going to feel sick. So it's just like we kind of have to do the things that maybe we don't necessarily want to do. Like I know a lot of people don't like going into work if they don't love their job, like they have a 9 to 5 or something. They'll say, "Oh, I hate Monday. I love Mondays," but everyone is like, "Ugh, I got to go to work again." So it's like they have that, I don't know, it's like a trigger cue in their brain where no matter what they do, it could be their personal life, relationship, or relationship with food. They give themselves that disassociation of, I don't want to do this because it doesn't make me happy.
That's definitely something I spend a lot of time working with my clients on because our mind can play tricks on us. And I think we do live in a world where that immediate gratification is rewarded and we crave that. We want instant. And the idea of delayed gratification is less appealing. Seeing likes and looking at reels on Instagram is probably more enjoyable in that moment than it is to clean your house, for sure. I get that. But I also think the more you delay and the more you procrastinate and the more you hold off on taking action, the more you're delaying true, real happiness and like living. And I think the more we avoid something, the more overwhelming it can be to start. I would just suggest and advise people to think about just imagine how they feel if they were to just begin, if they were to just start, if they were to just focus on cleaning their bedroom to start with, or cleaning the bathroom, or doing 2 dishes. How does that feel? And they might find that there is some level of joy or satisfaction or energy that they get from that. And if they can be honest about that feeling, then they can start to change the neural pathway between that action and the outcome. A lot of the time, we can say, oh, that salad isn't going to satisfy me. It's not going to taste good. It's full of vegetables. Lettuce is disgusting, right? But there's a million salads that can taste insanely good. really just depends on giving yourself a chance and being honest about that experience. How good was that? And how much better do you actually feel? We focus on just the first part of a story instead of focusing on the entire story. Yes, there's a little bit of effort that might be required, but you get incredible benefits pretty immediately and afterward. It's this gift that keeps giving when you take care of your body, when you take care of your home, when you take care of your mind. While those immediately pleasurable things might feel good in that moment, how does social media feel when you turn the app off? Like, do you feel amazing, or do you feel low, or do you feel like you've been quietly comparing yourself to other people, or you are having a hard time feeling grateful for all the things you have in your life because you're constantly focused on what other people have? I think it's just a matter of taking control of your mind and being honest about experiences and how you actually feel. And the more you're honest about that, the easier it is to say, you know what? I feel so much better when my space is clean. I feel so much better when I have eggs with some veggies and chimichurri sauce in the morning and a piece of toast. Like, I feel so much better. My cravings are less as the day goes on. I feel more dialed in at work. I'm more productive. I'm less exhausted at 3 o'clock. I think it really just starts with starting and being honest with yourself about how you feel.
We all have a script that we give ourselves. Sometimes the script is good, sometimes the script is bad. And we're just like, oh, salad, cheesecake, yes. Maybe you just have to look at your script too. Because if you have a script that is going after the unhealthy options, there's nothing wrong with having cake or ice cream in moderation, of course. It just can't be your staple when it comes to your diet. Because the end goal, as you said, is happiness. You want to be happy with how you feel. When you look in the mirror, you want to be happy with that too. And you do have to accept where you are too. It is going to be a process, it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be a magic pill. It's not a surgery, it's you doing the work. And I find that when a person digs deep and they commit to something, they're more satisfied that they did it. Think of it as if you worked so hard to get a promotion, you're going to be so excited that you got that promotion versus if you just knew somebody and and you just got that promotion. It's not the same feeling. Where you are right now, it might not be exactly where you want to be, but you do the work a step at a time. It doesn't have to be big changes today. It could be just one meal a day, starting at a good breakfast. Maybe you mess up for lunch, maybe you mess up for dinner, you start again. Breakfast, good breakfast, and then you move into lunch, and then you start to look at your snacking habits. You start to look at the foods that you have in your house. You say, you know what, this food is not good for me. And good for me meaning it's not going to give me the results that I'm looking for. It might taste really good, but sometimes it's just not going to be what you want. It could be inhibiting your attainment to the goal sooner rather than later. For example, if you have a goal and aspiration to fit in a dress or a swimsuit, or if you want to be a marathon runner, there's going to be foods that are going to slow you down, going to make it difficult to get to where you need to be physically fit and mentally fit. This is where you have to say, okay, I have to ring things in. I have to start to put things in order, and I have to start to cut ties with things that maybe are not benefiting me anymore. Maybe at some point, ice cream was your savior. It made you feel good. But did it make you feel good for the short term or for the long term? Do you need a fix the next day also? And this is where I think eating or having bad eating habits or not like having that intuitive eating mentality is just like I'm eating because it's pleasurable. And many people struggle with that. I know you probably do a lot of work with helping people their relationship with food. Let me put it this way. What is going to be the onset of them saying, okay, I'm going to break this relationship up. It's a bad spouse or bad boyfriend or girlfriend. We need to break up. I know sometimes people wait until they get that doctor's note, like, hey, you have diabetes, you have like something big. That's when a lot of people change. But can that happen sooner versus getting that bad note from a doctor?
Yeah, and I think when that happens, there's so much stress around that, and it becomes this frenzied experience where you feel like I have to change tomorrow or yesterday, and I don't know where to begin. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like a failure. I, first of all, want everyone to know that wherever you are in your health journey, with your eating, it is literally never too late. And like I said before, you can modify and change your body like bite to bite, meal to meal within 24 hours, 48 hours. It doesn't have to be this overwhelming, exhausting experience. And I think your body is so beautiful and so powerful and so important that we don't want to wait for it to get stuck or start to deteriorate. That if we can catch it even sooner and focus on what we can do to feel more energized, to feel more empowered, to feel more confident, to carry on each day with more energy and own that. And like that's something that you are doing for yourself. And then that ripple effect is massive. How it affects your kids, how it affects your relationships, how it affects your psyche, your ability to get through your bucket list. That's powerful. The way that I see it is we just have to keep celebrating every day and every moment of every day. So even if you made a choice that didn't feel great, how can you troubleshoot that without judgment, without guilt, without shame? Just like use your critical lens and say, huh, what went into this? What happened there? How can I course correct for next time or my next bite? And what can I do a little bit more intentionally next time? Taking some of the sting out of it and that critical internal dialogue is also going to help you move mountains faster. What I often say is criticism is rarely the catalyst that contributes to the kind of change that I think people are really looking for, like that self-critical conversation. Instead, if we can shift that to, wow, I know I'm working hard. I'm focusing on all these things. Some things are feeling really difficult right now. What's getting in the way of that? How can I modify that? And just focus on being curious instead of critical. I think those things are really important puzzle pieces in creating that kind of success that I think people are craving.
I love that. Curious instead of critical. Words of wisdom. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words that you can leave the audience with, and then please tell everyone where they can find you.
Thank you so much for listening. And like I said, you can tell I'm very passionate about this. I love food and I love when people feel well, period. I mean, I really want people to step away from feeling like they have to punish their body, to restrict their eating, to keep themselves down. I want people to love the body that they're in, love the evolution, love the nutrition that they're eating, and have it really make sense for them. I think when that comes from within, instead of people feeling like they have to adhere to these external rigid rules, that's when the magic happens, is when it makes sense for you and you're realizing, wow, I can trust myself again. I believe that I can do this a lot more capable than I gave myself credit for. And the choices that you continue to make just start to work for you. The goal isn't for it to feel overwhelming or stressful or like a full-time job. I want it to be effortless and sustainable and do it in a way where it's enjoyable and you're just getting more and more out of your life and more out of your body and more out of the things that matter to you in life. I'm also very active on Instagram. You can find me at maura.wellness. I'm always giving lots of tips and support and recipes. You can find me there. And I also have a 3-month program that I'm so excited about. I launched it toward the end of last year and the results that people are getting are really exciting. So it's a mix of one-on-one coaching with me with educational trainings, and it's all about the mind, body, and nutrition and really pulling those things together. Yeah, if you're interested, I would love to support you.
Perfect. And I will make it easy for everyone. All the links are going to be in the description box below. I'll also touch base with you to make sure I get that link for the 3-month program so people can easily just click it, sign up. They're good to go. Because the relationship that they have with food is going to be the driver for if they are going to get the body that they want, to get the lifestyle that they want. Everything is going to stem from a small change in nutrition because you have to have the energy to get up. You have to have the energy to push yourself to do the things that you need to do. For example, if you're an entrepreneur, yeah, you can wake up in the morning and say, I have no energy. Let me just waste the day away. Or you can say, I'm waking up. I know what to do. I have the energy because I ate good yesterday. Let me tackle let me tackle the day. And that is what we need. We need to be able to fight each day with 100%. Now, some days we might be 90%, maybe 70%, but we learn. Why are we at that 70%? Let's look at how we can be 100% the next day. What's missing? Did I drink enough water? Did I eat enough foods? Did I drink too much soda? Did I get enough sleep? There are so many factors that comes into our health, but we do have to do the first thing, we have to pay attention. And many people are just not paying attention. They just kind of consume. We are consumers. And at heart, we just consume naturally. But we do have to look at what we are bringing in. And the moment you start to look at what you're bringing into your body, then you can start to see what you're creating also. And if you're not creating happiness, if you're not creating joy and curiosity, the good curiosity, then I think more is going to be that person to help drive you in that right direction because this is what we need. We need to have a healthy body, healthy mind, and then we can start to get that happy life that we all want. I want to thank you so much, Maura, for coming on, spending some time with us, and talking about your work.